Hey guys, we're back, and we're going to kind of pick up where we left off. I'm here with Krista, Koenig, Anna Gabriel, and Matthew Hutchins. So where we were originally is talking about your personal licensing issues here. Going forward in this part of the video, I'd like to discuss some of the background information that, if the Department of Justice and others looks at this, it might even prove some criminal activities that they want to jump on and investigate.
I would hope so.
Okay, good. So with that being said, I got originally interested in what was going on up here when I found the Board of Supervisors suicide, which was to me questionable, and I started looking into it. It involved what a questionable suicide was being reported in the paper was that they were responding to gunshots, and as the gunshots didn't the next day, I guess, turn out to be gunshots, it turned to be death by cocaine overdose. And that Board of Supervisors member's name was Adam Hill. And as Anna has been telling me, you were a personal friend of Adam Hill. Can you tell us a little bit about that relationship and what you know about the quote-unquote suicide?
Well, Adam Hill started, he's a man of the people in our community. He stuck up for the issues that mattered most to the majority of the folks of our county. And he was an advocate for cannabis. And I met him because we were fighting big oil coming into the valley where I live. They were trying to open up at least 5 wells right across the street from me. And so I spearheaded a fight against that. And that lasted 5 years. And Adam Hill first came out, and I met him because he came out to the valley to talk to us one-on-one, sit down in the living room and find out how we felt and what was happening and what he could do to help. And so away...
Approximately when was that? What year?
Gosh.
Just round numbers.
14 or something?
No, this was way back, because the oil company, that was like maybe 2007.
Yeah.
So you knew Adam for quite a while.
Yes.
Did he have a history of depression or psychological issues?
He did, and he struggled. And but I believe a lot of it came from the stress of his job. He had a coworker at the Board of Supervisors, Lynn Compton, who is very adversarial and very angry, very controlling, and seems to have influence over other board members, specifically Debbie Arnold and Pershong.
So those two would go toe-to-toe on a lot of issues.
Everything that Adam was for, she was against, and everything basically that she was for, basically Adam was
Sounds
against.
like it got personal.
No. This person is just a horrible person.
Well, to a degree. I found the article. I sent the article over to you where she actually speaks out against him directly on a personal basis as well as business.
Okay.
She's just mean to everybody and anybody, though. She has no problem saying mean things to just about anybody.
How does Lynn Compton come down on the business of licensing cannabis in SLO?
Ooh, she's destroying it. She's making sure that none of us get through.
And how did
she
Adam...
would get rid of it altogether.
And so Adam, contrarily, Adam was for it.
Absolutely.
And assisting the growers and helping them navigate the processes.
He assisted me by letting me know that Lynn Compton was coming for me and that I should get a good lawyer. That was back in 2017.
What did he mean by that, coming for you?
I don't know. That's what the email or the message that he sent me.
Do you have that still?
I sure do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to any law enforcement agency willing to look into this, what can you tell us about the so-called suicide?
Well, first I heard that that shots were fired, and so people called it in, and so the sheriffs came out to do a wellness check.
And that was reported in the newspaper.
That was reported on Cal Coast News.
Okay.
And then...
it was redacted within 24 hours.
24 hours, yeah, I saw that. That's what got my attention.
And because he was such a prominent person in our community and was loved by many,
right.
It was really odd to me that nothing showed up in the paper. No articles were written, no obituary ever showed up, nothing. There was one paragraph that the county put on its official website about his passing, but that was it. There was a complete blackout on anything related to Adam Hill and his passing. And I found that to be really odd because of what a great figure he was in our community.
Sure.
And to have a complete blackout on anything said about him was weird. And so I originally read that there was shots fired, and then days later I find out that reporter was asked to remove that article. I don't know who asked her that. But
do you know who the reporter is?
Her name is Karen Ville.
Karen Ville.
And she reported that.
So she changed her story.
And she changed her story at the request of somebody.
Okay. So let's go back to, do you know of the autopsy and what the families might have been able to turn up based on how he did reportedly die?
Well, we do know by somebody who was on duty in the room that the body was not processed properly, and
Okay.
that person was very upset because that should have been done.
Were they able to
processes should have
were
been
they able
followed.
to go to the cause of death? It wasn't a gunshot wound?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't speak to that.
Cause of death, when the Slow Tribune, one of our least favorite newspapers, which seems to control the narrative of the entire county, they came out like a week later with a report that he died by suicide, and that they checked his IP address on his computer, and that he had apparently researched the exact concoction of what he took that killed him. It was the antidepressant mixed with cocaine. And so they told us that we are to believe that he only ever researched it the one time, and that's the only time he's ever done cocaine. That article is in the Slow Tribune.
So let me juxtapose something. If Adam Hill were still with us, what would the state of cannabis licensing be in Slow today? He was a friend of the licensee.
He was, but he was in the minority because what Lynn Compton has done is there's 5 board supervisors, and Lynn Compton, Debbie Arnold, and John Prashong, they basically always vote the way Lynn wants them to vote. They're in lockstep. So that only leaves 2 people pro-cannabis. And now with Adam gone, and now the new person that they've brought in, Dawn, she is very pro-cannabis. I was very grateful that the governor chose somebody who was very much like Adam Hill, very much pro-community, pro-cannabis. And so, but still, now it's still a minority. And they're having a fit. You watch any of these hearings,
Public hearings, I'm going to go to that
public hearings
next.
for San Luis Obispo, when they're talking about cannabis, you'll see these 2 people over here losing their minds because these 3 people are just
There's a Board of Supervisor hearing from
being really unfair.
June or August of last year. So last summer they had a Board of Supervisor meeting on updating to Phase 3 ordinances. So we haven't even gotten through Phase 1, let alone getting to Phase 2. They wanted to adopt Phase 3, which would have banned outdoor, would have changed the face of all these projects that have been in the line waiting all this time, would have all had to conform to Phase 3.
Do you think that's a way of limiting the competition?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
It's a way of limiting any small
Legacy,
business.
yeah.
in the Board of Supervisors hearing, there's direct opposition where John Pashong and Bruce Gibson stand up for how hard the process is in this county, and that only 6 people have gotten through. And at this rate, it's going to take forever to get everybody through. So that's how the Phase 3 got denied. But Lynn was gunning for it because she wanted to ban outdoor, change all the setbacks, it would have changed
So
the
how
entire
does this
phase.
affect those that are actually reviewing the applications? I know that to be Eric Hughes, right?
Yeah.
And
I
he must
can
be
only
pulling his
imagine-
hair out.
I could only imagine that the people at the county are very, very frustrated because they do their job as county workers, and they write up these.
They're taking it very seriously.
They're taking it very seriously, and they write up these really, I think, very well put together not business plans,
Presentations.
on what the project's about. And everything that they put makes no difference to Lynn Compton cares nothing about anything that the county recommends.
But there are some that are approved. So are they approved on the spot at the meeting? Do they ask them to make
Right.
revisions?
Oh, that's an interesting
Do they
point.
ask them to make
The
revisions?
more you watch, so in the beginning we waited for our hearings, and I watched a few of my friends' hearings, and then there's a few people that we don't love that they're in this process that we watch their hearings because it's controversial. And the more you watch it, the more it becomes a Muppet Show. And I have a friend of mine who was denied his project of 2 acres outdoor. His proposed water usage was well under anybody's water allowance for the year on their property.
Okay.
And in the area where he is, he was proposing a 2,400 foot setback on one side and 1,400 on the other side. And it was an interesting. One of the planning commissioners should have recused himself because he lived within 4 miles of the project.
Who
He
was
did
that
not.
planning commissioner?
That was Multari. Or no, Campbell. That was Campbell.
Okay.
So Campbell should have recused. He did not. And then he pushed the narrative to where they outwardly, and they consulted their legal counsel during the hearing, they outwardly said they were going to deny the project because they weren't sure exactly how to vote on it. So they felt like the applicant should appeal it, go in front of the Board of Supervisors, and let them decide if it's within the ordinance.
Was this recent?
This was very recent. This was in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Now, apparently there's been a pool raised for the guy to appeal his own project because you have to pay $850 to appeal the project.
$850.
Right. And if he doesn't appeal it, You have 14 days to appeal. If he does not appeal it,
The time's up.
those setbacks will stand for all the other projects going through.
Got it.
They accumulate. So,
It sets a precedent.
right.
That's a
Meanwhile,
precedent, yeah.
last Thursday, the 20th, they had a hearing for one of Helios's Day Springs projects.
Okay.
And he had.
How come that name?
Helios
How come
Day
that?
Springs
How come that
coming
name
up.
keeps
I'm
coming
trying to
up?
avoid it, but this has to be said. In that planning commission hearing, I swooped to the very end because I've been very busy. I've been able to watch the whole thing. I swooped to the very end, and I get to the board of or the planning commission having a conversation about how they're going to work through all of his code violations.
Ha.
That he's had so many code
Is
violations.
this on record?
This
Yes,
is on
public record.
Planning Commission hearing 420 this last week on 420, ironically enough. So they had Eric pull up conditions of approval during the hearing. This is unprecedented.
Eric Hughes, the one who
He
has
does
to
all the
clear
hearings,
the
yes.
applications,
That's his facet.
review
of the
them,
county.
and clear them.
So they directed him to
Process
pull up
them.
his conditions of approval on screen during the hearing and update it so that Helios can get through with multiple code violations. Meanwhile, 3 weeks ago, Beanway for Pozo Management Group, which is Pozo Saloon, got denied their project because, let's face it, when we registered our grows, we were all unpermitted electrical. You cannot go to the county and get an electrical permit for your cannabis.
Right.
That was back in the day. So technically, all of our advanced operators were operating code violation, but we fixed it. We all fixed it. So
Right away.
they used that on Beanway's project to deny him
Yeah.
after an appeal.
Wow.
So
That
he's-
years ago, he had some electrical violations when he first got started.
The same as this. Technically, my greenhouses are a code violation because I had electricity running in it on a not yet permitted electrical panel, and I had plastic over it, and I had lights
But
in it.
as we said earlier, you believe the only thing left to get you a provisional license here in SLO would be the sheriff's telling you where your fences have to
Okay,
be.
well, that gets me to the planning and building department. So once I finish the sheriff, that's the precursor for the business license. So
Okay.
he's doing the background check, and then it's up to the sheriff where and how tall and what kind of fence.
Okay.
So once that's determined and I have my double barrier, and he likes a security plan, then I get the fun of going to planning and building.
But Helios is getting blessings and support, preferential support, during the public hearings.
Yes.
And Eric's going along with this. Is he
He has
being?
no choice.
It's his job.
It's his job.
He's doing it at the behest of the planning commission.
It's the planning commissioners barking orders during the meetings. Like when I had my hearing, they were barking at the lawyer to give them my taxes. They wanted to see my taxes.
Okay, so that's adversarial. Did they see you're guilty until proven
And they flat out said I was in the process of growing, and they'd been there 2 days prior, and they saw with their own eyes.
Campbell and
but I had already
Lutari.
been shut down for about 8 months because of not paying
Perjured.
taxes.
So there were no
Can't
plants
sell
growing, and they claimed there were.
No plants growing, and hadn't.
And
been
who
for
made
8
that
months.
claim?
Two of
Well,
the.
Campbell said it first. Campbell said a few days before the hearing, he drove out there and he saw plants.
Okay.
And then Campbell said, oh, well, I did too. Well, the attorney somehow magically got the button pushed on the Zoom meeting to where he could get a word in edgewise, and he says, no, I was just out there a few days ago. There are no plants there.
So they're lying.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's on public record.
And I went I went outside after the meeting. I took a picture, time, date stamped of all the pots with nothing in them, and I came back in and I emailed to the county my case
Not even
manager.
6 plants outdoors.
I
Okay.
emailed her a time, date stamped picture of the grow so it could go in the file that day to show that there was nothing.
Well,
And
even-
that's not seemed to have any benefit to
Well,
your arguments, your case, or your process.
Even worse is I don't understand how going this far through the process and being as it's cannabis and it's specialty and there's only 141 permits, why they can't all be required to put boots on the ground at least 2 weeks before a hearing.
Bingo.
Because
Yeah, nobody ever came to my
They
farm.
review your project, they talk about it for 2 minutes, you get 10 minutes to present, you listen to an hour and a half of public comment, and then they decide.
And
what
it
they
sounds
decide.
like the decision's foregone
Yes.
conclusion.
Now, had they gone out there as a group a couple of weeks before or a week before the hearing, they would be very clear that they couldn't lie and say that they saw plants because you can't see Anna's fence from the road.
Yeah, you can't
So
see it
you
from
can't
the road.
see plants. Even if he flapped his wings.
Oh, I
and
know.
flew up into the air,
I think you
couldn't
guys
see
have
it.
made your case on that. Let's go back to Helios, though. That name keeps popping up. And I know of a case Helios is involved with currently. I'm not sure if it's a plaintiff or a defendant, but no, I believe they're a defendant. It's
Sismac is suing
Sismac, I
Helios,
believe, and
yeah.
I'm probably misspelling
And
or
there's a
misstating.
few cases.
But Sismac was, a very influential businessman. I believe he worked for HUD. Elderly gentleman, invested something like $17 million,
a lot.
and was defrauded all of that. So his case against Helios is currently in front of Judge
Coates.
Coates.
Same judge that just threw us under the bus for $10.5 million without us ever being served, without her ever speaking to us.
Okay, so I think that's worth digging into a little bit. How many cases has Judge Coates sat over involving Helios that you know of?
At least 4 that I know of.
I think there's at least 4 or
'Cause
5.
there was the Orgnock one that you sent me over the other day. I'd seen that one. And then the Schmizak case.
Has
Anyway,
anything
and he
going
gets a pass
has
every
anything
time.
gone against Helios
No.
with that judge? Okay, that's worth noting.
He gets a pass when he goes to recently dispensaries were given out. There was a Morro Bay dispensary. There was a whole list of people that had put their hat in the race to be the proprietors of that business, and all the good people got passed up, and he was basically at the bottom of the list, and they chose him to have that dispensary. And so now I don't know how many, I guess just 2-3 dispensaries. The county only has a few altogether.
Well, they're all in cities, and Helios has almost all of them or a percentage of
Well,
them.
we're going to make sure your current representation counsel knows that that's been the case. You're fully aware of it, and Judge Coates might have an incentive to somehow be complicit in these agreements.
Just keep throwing around in my head.
That's a question for me.
Yeah.
That's a question for me because I'm very concerned about what's happening. Why does she keep letting him get a pass? Why does he keep getting a pass? And he gets all the permits and he gets all the dispensaries, but yet we can't get through anything, and we're being sued. And
Okay.
she
No, I get it. I get it. What are you saying?
May 3rd is that. Remember, I saw you the court docket I sent you over. May 3rd, Coates is hearing one of Helios's cases.
Oh, yeah.
I do believe it's the Schmizak case.
Right.
He sued for receivership. It's a $15 million case. He
On
gave Helios $15 million, and he sued for receivership. Coates denied him receivership. So.
Okay, now that's where he wanted receivership for the dispensary so that money couldn't get hidden, and he was denied. So that, folks, that's another thing that got my attention. I mean, as a third-party financial representation from the court, he was due that. What were their arguments against providing that third-party court-appointed administration?
We don't know. It's
It'll
not
be
public record.
It's not online.
It's not online. You have to get a judge to subpoena or a lawyer to subpoena.
So is it possible Sysmex doesn't know these things, and maybe even his attorneys don't know them? So the purpose of this video is to make sure that, based on what we have just discussed, they are going to be aware of it.
I sure hope so.
Well, and I'm curious what Coates thinks about your guys asking for receivership if she's going to deny Schmizak receivership.
Well, let's go into another thing. Elder abuse. Now, Mr. Sysmex is up there in yours.
Yeah, he is. Right.
And in your case, your mother was named, and as you
My
look,
mother
you
was
look
named.
great, but I'm assuming she's in her 70s, 80s.
Yes.
All right, so what did this represent to her?
Elder living situation. She left her condo about 5 years ago, moved into an elder situation, and apparently when she was served, she's named in the suit. She only comes to the farm maybe once a year for a visit, but she is on the deed.
How was she served?
She was never served, but they did send service to her old address.
Okay.
And gave it to the girl that answered the door and told the girl, this is what they've said in their affidavit on their part, the plaintiff's part. They told the girl to give it to Carolyn. They asked the girl to give it to Carolyn.
That's not proper service.
And Carolyn lives in another county, and they don't see each other.
Okay. So that being said, she became fully aware of the receivership recently.
No.
Okay, so she doesn't know that.
I haven't told my mother. I don't want her to know. She's
found out
elder.
Friday.
She's in a, she's frail. She just lost 30 pounds.
Has this been stressful?
For me,
for her,
she says that she knows I'll take care of it, but she's really, I think, having a tough time. I mean, she's lost 30 pounds, for God's sake. Everything that we've ever worked for.
She doesn't understand all this either. I mean, she's invested heavily with you. She loves you. Your daughter, you're going to take care of her, and she wants to help you pursue your dream. I've had that with my father.
And that's why we bought the property together, because I had dreams.
So this is an abusive process. It's a fraud upon the court. And
abuse against my mother. Coates heard separately each one of us. Each month they went through all 5 of us, and she gave a hearing to each one. And so Carolyn, without ever knowing, was put on the hook for $10.5 million.
So are you prepared to take this to the federal level if you've exhaused all of your state court remedies?
Absolutely.
And an appeal?
I think it should be.
Well, because
what's happened is very criminal.
Because what we have here in this case is Ninth Circuit Judge Sidney Thomas protected lower federal court Judge Bashant, who is protecting a Superior Court Judge Woolfield. And I've been forced to name them, but provide the evidence. And what I can tell you, if it helps, is that even though judges want to protect other judges, we call it the black wall. If you provide enough evidence, they have to, because at some point it has to get cut, and those that created these problems, these issues with fraud upon the court, have to be dismissed. They have to be accountable. And if nothing else, if they're elected, they're not going to get reelected, and they might, actually be discharged while they're on the bench. And that actually ties in a little bit about Matthew's case too, and with a public defender. So the lawyers that represent you and how that information gets to the judge, sometimes it's just a little too cozy. It's like the public defender already works with the U.S. Attorney and that judge, and it's predetermined what's going to happen. So we see a lot of that.
When I just see them talking, that they've known each other for many years.
And it's not like you didn't have problems with your case, but constitutionally speaking, your lawyer didn't stick up for you and dig into the things that had to be dug into to prove any defenses that would have been relative to the sentencing you received.
And regardless of whether, obviously I didn't give him a lot to work with, but regardless of whether the case is 100% lost already or not, you have a duty,
Yes.
to
Pound the table.
Yeah.
Examine the facts. So don't ignore the facts, examine the facts. So going back to facts, the other thing that got me initially interested in SLO was the Lowell Farm CDFA case. Now, you may not be that familiar with it. I'm not sure how much you are, but what I can tell you is a deal was made outside of SLO County by a state agency, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, or Agriculture. And I remember they were the plaintiff suing Lowell Farms. So what can you tell us about that? And then the judgment ends up being $500,000. And when it's a $500,000 judgment, it goes around SLO County. They're not even involved in the process. And this is an illegal farm running, which I presume Adam Hill knew about.
So what I find interesting about that one is CDFA called the county and told them to go code enforce because Lowell's failed to pull their temporary state processing license, which we were required to have the beginning of 2018.
Yeah.
So if you picked it too soon, you wouldn't have had it in time to trim your plants.
And that's the extraction
And that was the temporary
operations?
processing license. That was to trim it, roll joints.
Oh,
There was
okay.
a certain number of things you could do.
part of cultivation.
Yeah, and it was only for like 4 months. So
All
we
right.
waited till the very last minute and pulled it right about the time we figured we'd be harvesting. So we would have it. Lowell's never even bothered to pull it. So the state, CDFA, called SLO County and sent them over there to code enforce and said they're over there operating and they do not have a temporary processing license. And that was the only license that was available at the moment. They went over there and they had allegedly had product on the farm from other places.
How many square feet would you estimate this at?
It is big.
Large?
Yeah.
Very large, yeah.
Yeah, good sized processing facility. So, and they were rolling joints
So-
without their temporary. So, as I understand it, that's irreparable harm to the supply chain because they're supposed
Yes.
to be on metric. They're supposed to have their temporary state license. They do not have their license to operate, and that was the basis of the suit.
So would Adam Hill or any of the Board of Supervisors members, Eric Hughes, any of these people have known this, that they weren't licensed and they're operating?
They didn't pay any attention. They don't
Okay,
care.
so they're not getting the tax revenues that should have came to them. And the deal that was made with CDFA was for
Well, the
$500,000.
county never thought the taxes all the way through. They don't want distribution in this county. So we are stuck having to ship it all to LA. And even if we got operational this year, there's a chance I might not even have a dry facilities, which means I have to cut it wet or freeze it.
Wow.
If I cut it wet, I have to ship it to LA to a place that's licensed to hang it and dry it and have it processed and trimmed and tested and packaged and all that other stuff. So as far as I see, my partners in the city of LA is getting all the taxes, and at the end of the year, the only thing they're getting from me is a square footage tax.
Is Lowell Farm still in business?
Yeah, as far
That
as I know, they're
operation's
still
still
operating.
going, okay.
Actually, they're one of the 6 in this county that are operating on a full annual license.
Yeah, when I reached out to Eric Hughes, I was like, how come the city or the SLO County wasn't involved in these negotiations? I mean, it's certainly tax revenue that was due you, and they're basically allowing the state to say who can and cannot exist in your county.
Well, they're too busy playing parking enforcer for who's applying.
Yeah,
At
well,
this
they're-
point, everybody's looking at the application process and pulling a permit.
The residents of this county need to know that.
They need to wake up because even Eric, speaking with him at length, he's finally starting to be aware of what is going to come when we leave the cannabis division in the county. The minute you're approved and you go to planning and building, you thought this last 5 years was bad.
Well, this is
It's
systemic
getting
in,
worse.
and possibly other industries too, maybe food and beverages, alcohol licensing,
It's
and
in
so on.
everything. It's not cannabis is just the low-hanging fruit. It's the easy one
Yeah.
to expose
Yep.
because everybody's paying attention. So, for example, I've got another friend I talk to a lot who's got an approved farm. She's the next person in line. Now, they do not give you a business license until you're fully signed off to start growing. There's not been a business license issued to any of the 34 approved projects since last November. So we are going on 7 months that nobody has attained a business license to operate since those first 6 started.
So they can't even take taxes on that.
No, they cannot.
So
And
how
then
are you
the problem
expected to
is-
operate?
Let me get there because this is shocking, is that the minute that Claire's project left the cannabis division and it went to planning and building, she got this long letter of planning and building asking for all these things that weren't part of her approved project. So what the heck did she get approved? And now they've changed the project. So what was approved?
Who's Claire?
She's another approved project here in the county.
Okay.
She's another
Farmer.
She's another farmer.
Is she willing to go on the record with some of this
Oh,
stuff?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk to her in another interview.
Yeah. So what she's doing for me is her and I talk a lot. She's further down the road in this process than I am. She's already dealing with planning and building. I have not gotten there yet because I haven't gotten past the sheriff and the beginning of the business license.
All right.
So I have an idea of what I'm in for when they get my project in planning and building, and this Matt Lavelle character looks at it, who I've seen the email from Claire, says, I don't care about CDFA.
Oh, no.
Yes. I've seen the
Oh,
email.
okay.
So, yeah. So he's already saying, I already know this is coming. And then she called me the other day.
How long has she been in the process?
Same amount of time as we
Oh,
have.
my
She
We
was
all
a
word.
business operator.
Only people
So
that
get
could be
this.
operating are people that started in 2016. We all started the process at the same time.
When she applied, they wouldn't let her have electrical power to her grow. So they said she could use a generator. Well, in this county, you can only use a generator temporarily for 2 years.
Right.
Well, this is a 5-year use permit. Nobody bothered to catch that in the approval process. During the conditions of approval, they caught that. So now they told her to go get some special off-the-grid solar.
Oh,
Which
nonsense.
is ridiculous, and they weren't allowing in the county prior to this
Yeah.
that they're allowing. So
One
this is
hand
the
doesn't
best
know what
part.
the other one's doing.
So they went out there and they did a thing about the fence, and then the sheriff and the new inspector went out there and accused her of a bunch of things that they came back to the office and found out were actually okay.
Okay.
So they went and they were going, oh, we're going to write you up. And then they went back, they're like, oopsie. And then they redacted it. Well, then she's going to get her cameras. And the guy, the code enforcement guy said, well, you have to put your cameras up on a 12-foot pole. She goes, what are you talking about? He goes, well, somebody could take a shovel and, turn the camera. And it's like, so this is
Moronic.
what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So she
It changes
got
from day to day.
back to 8 feet
Yeah.
high because you don't need a permit for anything 8 feet in the air. But let's be realistic about this. No one is allowed within your licensed premises that isn't already, vetted before they even walk in the licensed area. So you're going to know who walked up to the security camera with the shovel and moved it because it's going to be on camera.
I would like to know about the APCD. So their pollution control district does not allow generators to run full time, a certain amount of hours because of the amount of
Right. Those would
particulates.
have only been for running her tanks to feed.
That was it. Okay.
Otherwise, because we are outdoors only, no lights allowed in the grow, not
Okay.
even for security
All right.
lights.
So there's an argument to be made
And
that
they
generator
allow
would
us
work.
an ancillary nursery within our grow,
All right.
up to 25%. But how do you do a nursery without lights? Because you can't have lights in your grow area.
Yeah,
But
that's
you can have a nursery.
clearly another compromise that they haven't addressed. You mentioned something about being told to raise money. That was one of the. Can we get into that a little
Oh,
bit? And
so
I don't
this-
want to mischaracterize this. So
No,
tell us
so-
how this went down.
I don't really understand this one. So part of our business license is we have to provide the sheriff with who our investors are.
Yes.
Well, as a business person, being businessy outside of cannabis, I understand that if this was any other type of business, I could go to the bank, I could apply for a loan for startup, and I would have money on the books to show what I'm spending.
Right.
Because we're cannabis, we have no banking. So therefore, my sheriff is demanding to know who my investors are. But I'm not investable yet, so I do not have investors. So it's holding up my business license process because they want us to tell them who we're laundering money with, if you're dumb enough to launder money with them.
Right.
That's how I see it.
Okay.
So we are not, and the only other person I know the only other people I know that are legit have all done the same thing. There's no investor. We just give our own name and say, we'll tell you who the investors are when we
And
can
that's not
invest
been
in
good
it.
enough.
Not really.
Okay. All right. Just to quickly go back, I know time's of the essence. Adam Hill. Was there anything in his personal relationship with you that would suggest that he was, doomed to kill himself?
No, not at all. Actually, he had a girlfriend he was real happy about. He had really gotten into yoga. There was a lot of things in his life. He had actually spent some time at a facility to help him get
Deal with that.
back together. Yeah. And he actually was seeming to do really well. And in his meetings, he was very strong. He didn't seem defeated and weak.
So you would encourage his family and remaining family to look deeply into how he died.
Very much so.
There are so many
Very much
things
so.
around his death and close to. I mean, so what was it? May he was dead. So March was the sealed search warrant. So he was being investigated by the FBI.
Okay.
Okay, so that's going on. And then there was another death 5 days before him of somebody who had an approved project.
And what was his name?
Sean Despain.
So Sean is a farmer.
Sean's a farmer.
Yes.
He was
who
a-
just received one of the very few licenses in the entire county.
And how-
he had previous dealings with. Helios Day Spring.
So the FBI had been out to Sean's farm allegedly a couple of times prior to Sean turning up dead of an overdose.
All right.
So Sean died of an overdose of ironically the same. So I know a person who has both death certificates and is saying, or autopsy reports. And basically they both died of the exact same concoction. Sean died 5 days prior to
And what was that
Adam Hill
concoction?
dying. Cocaine and an antidepressant.
Was it, so what was the antidepressant?
Not sure.
We don't know.
It
It was the same one though?
Yeah.
So then the cocaine was sourced from the same location.
Most likely. I mean, that's pretty ironic that within 5 days you've got two people. And why would Sean kill himself?
Is cocaine a problem in this county?
Yes.
And it is everywhere. But
yeah,
there tend to be the
allegedly-
same. There tend to be the same people over and over and over responsible for it. So that opens up a whole nother can of worms. But one worth
Well, I would
investigating.
like to say, because this should be known, that allegedly, through many people, have told us, and that they're able to purchase cocaine over the counters at the restaurants and bars that are owned by the people that are suing me. That cocaine has been for
And who
years.
are those people?
Billy Hales. He's the main local business.
But wasn't he
owner.
named in as a
No,
plaintiff?
they
As
left
a defendant?
his name out. They
So
left-
he wasn't
was
a
the
defendant.
only one I really did.
Correct.
I had communications with. He would come out.
Well, why wouldn't
weekly.
Brian Alexander name him?
Because they have liquor licenses and they're not supposed to be anywhere near cannabis.
Oh, the plot
He
thickens.
owns 30-some liquor licenses in the
33 or
county.
34 of the
Yeah,
bars.
somehow he has almost every liquor license in the county.
Okay,
Him and
and
his
you're
friends.
asserting that he might be responsible for at least allowing or turning a blind eye to the cocaine being sold in his businesses?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
And I think it changes, apparently it changes which bar maybe. There's like a rotation or something from what I've heard.
See.
That people know they can go get it at this bar for these weeks and then they got to go to a different bar.
This is not what Dennis Perone envisioned
been
in
trying
cannabis
to get
licensing and medical cannabis. So to have these onslaughts coming through in these murky waters with legitimate quote unquote business people has to be investigated.
Yeah.
And you're about to lose your farm.
Well, that's what I'm being told.
So your attorney.
I refuse to roll over
Nope.
yet, ever. And so I will fight this all the way to the Supreme Court if I have to.
And indeed you may. And at least exposing this for what it is, because sunlight is the best disinfectant. You have to expose this.
And thank you, Daryl, for including me in this video because we have been struggling out here for years, and I've just recently met this young man on the internet, and I sent out some kind words to him because what he's going through is very difficult, and I feel unjust. Just like I feel that we've been treated
Well,
unjustly.
just to go to his case, so SB 519 it's currently being debated, and it's going to be in council early this coming week, and that would make legal all three of the drugs that he was charged with. And in this case, in this particular case, they also raided him and found cannabis.
So they made a prosecutorial discretionary decision not to charge the cannabis.
Yes.
So it appears as though they're violating the doctrine of preemption to be deferential to what state law is, which
They don't have that authority.
they don't have that authority, but it seems to be
It's inconsistent.
like a rule that at least they're consistent in that inconsistency, but then there's
The psychedelics, it's different.
so if that law passes, then they'll have to be inconsistently consistent with that as well. But then there's the issue of not charging me for ketamine, which isn't legal and is scheduled. So it's not like they do you any favors. If they can get you on something, they do. So it's just.
And this is your life. I mean, we're talking 10 years that you agreed to, and you were seduced into that. So
I'd like some of my 30s back.
Exactly. And we all do, actually. You started this in 2015, and here we are. And from my deepest heart of hearts, I really got to thank you for your fight and your stick-to-itiveness, because this fight is not over.
I feel it's just beginning.
30 years of my life went into being
feel it's
here,
just
and
beginning.
I stepped in cannabis to facilitate being here, and I'm not giving up. The alternative is terrible. No.
Yeah.
So if we got to give 64 a thumbs up, thumbs down, ladies, what do you think? Everybody?
Thumbs down.
All right, we're going to end on that note, and we would ask anybody watching this video to please reach out to us on Band Members, our Facebook group. Everybody there and here is involved in keeping us up to date as to what's going on, and fight the fight. Don't give up. Thank you very much.
everybody.
All right. Ta-ta.